Dr. Shiva always tries to pack a punch, with almost all the sessions. But I think it's good discussions. That's what we came here for. This one is on the workforce forecasting and planning and demystifying the same, right? So I'll kick it off. I think this is something that all of us grapple with, right? With the changing environments, post-COVID, the hybrid workforce, advent of MLAI. How do we kind of cope up with these changing demands from the business, right? And we had a interesting session from Dell, how they have, managed their CCOD function. And the last one, the Goldman Sachs company, they Apex on as well, trying to grapple with the demand side of the house and the supply side of the house at the same time, right? Um, I think the key is, the changes that are happening, and that's the only constant, right, in our lives. So, I'll kick it off with some key questions, and happy for each one of you to kind of share your thoughts, right, in a very candid way, right? So, in terms of what's the context, right? What are the intricacies of workforce, forecasting and planning? Given that we have myriads of tools available, what's the practices that you run in your organization? And that should be the takeaway for the folks out here, right? So in terms of the foundation principles, right, for workforce planning, what do you think has really changed or evolved over time, right? So Arvind, if you want to spend some thoughts on that.
Sure. So I think if you look at from where we began the journey, I'll just take you guys 1900. We used to call production planning. And I think Sanjeev and ENY team, they set the stage pretty right. Today we call workforce. It used to be called production control before. How many people you need, how many items you need to kind of build, and then the folks you need to deliver that.
Yeah.
So the entire supply chain used to be there before, and we used to call it production control. Then came, say, 1920, Erlang. We started talking about Erlang because telecom industry came in, and people started looking at, how do we kind of staff to the demand? And with that, how do we kind of give best customer experience to our clients?
Yeah.
So we kind of looked at Erlang, we started building that model, and then came in 1980 BPO. That's when people started relating BPO to a telecom industry. They looked at Erlang, telecom is the best one, which is closest one. And based on that, they picked up some best practices and staffed people. Now, during this journey, overall journey, the way technology has played a role in last couple of years, because it was all Excel before.
Yeah.
I remember when I started my career in 2000, 2003, it was all about Excel. We used to do forecasting, everything in spreadsheets. Then we started having Aspect was a tool that came into market. We used to call Blue Pumpkin. We used to build our forecast through that. And then came in, a lot of other, like Variant came. Now we have Data Native coming. Now, one of the companies that I admired, and almost 4 years back, when we were looking at reworking our contract with NICE, Collabrio. And I'm a kind of little techie, I get into detail of forecasting part of it. So their CEO and CTO came, they presented, and that's when I was working with my data science team on LSTM model on forecasting, which is long-term, short-term memory, which is a node-based concept. And it basically captures all the historical data and relevant data, and then releases the irrelevant data. And based on that, it derives the trend and get to the right forecast. And when I looked at Collabrio, I was really excited because that's the company who was working on these models. So while there's a lot of story to talk about, I will kind of pass on to, and I'm sure in future questions, I'm going to talk a lot more about case studies.
No, thanks, Arvind. I think you summed it up right from the Erlang C to the Blue Pumpkin and all the calculators that we used to have in Excel, to now the these firms that really enable that at the click of a button. So the next question is a follow up, right? So in terms of the forecasting accuracy, right? What are some of these strategies and best practices that Prakash, you or Prashant, if you want to share, because that's where the dollars are really hiding, right? So the human capital, your forecasting accuracy really, whether it's a captive or a third party, it's the human capital. And how do you plan and the forecasting accuracy, what's your thought around it, right?
So forecasting is something like saying, I want to be happy, healthy, and wealthy, right? So it involves a lot of actions to be taken by choice and to be executed with discipline. Now, at any point in time, like whether it is a 3-month forecast or a 6-month forecast, it can be bifurcated into 3 buckets. One is kind of a confirmed deal, confirmed requirements. You know that this deal is in the pocket. Now it has to kick started at certain timeline. So there you have a fair accuracy. Second layer is every business unit takes a number, revenue, like I will do say 100 million in the coming quarter. And for them, probably a 90 million is kind of grounded, so we know what kind of business is going to come. The 10 million kind of a thing is still a fluid.
Yep.
So there, as a workforce management, either we take the kind of same mix, or a lot of things happen outside the system. Once the deal is in, or at least it has 70% probability it is there in your pipeline system.
Yep.
But you have to connect with the sales team, sales operations team, offline, to understand what are the deals that you are bidding, and try to really smell out what is the kind of mix or what is the skill set that is what is getting required. So this is on the forecasting side. Now, parallelly, what we also do internally is look at multiple channels that is available. One is, of course, the bench that is available. Now, the kind of work in IT services broadly get classified into 3, right? One is an annuity contract, where you will have 3-year, 5-year kind of an engagement. So there, 2 things happen. One, we drive in a targeted manner, focused manner, the rotation for the folks. So we know that in this quarter, these are the potential folks who are getting tenured, and the delivery team is willing to release, provided we have a backfill succession planning, blah, blah, blah. So that's one source. Second is, as part of cost optimization in FPP projects, we run various charters in terms of automation, productivity, efficiency. Some of the case studies we saw that, right? So multiple accounts, various projects keeps running. And we know that from this geography, this type of skill set is going to get released.
Yeah.
And third one is, with these kind of information available, we have what you call a search and match kind of an engine. So from that, we know X percentage or X number is available kind of ready match. The remaining is maybe, we take a cut off that 50-60% match is there. The remaining can be upskilled or trained. So the intervention, from there, the talent skilling team or the training team gets their charter. So their forecasting happens from that. And the remaining, we know that, yes, either we have to hire or we have to go for contracting. So this largely works for that 90% which I told. 10% is fluid. As and when business comes only, we know. And typically, these kind of quote unquote, the unpredictable thing comes largely in a time and material kind of an environment, where suddenly some customer will come back and say, I need 100 resources to be ramped up in say 30 days time,
yeah,
which they share with multiple vendors. So
yeah,
it is that first come, first serve, right?
Absolutely.
So that's where we have the maximum
No, I think
challenge.
you really captured it very well. And increasingly what I feel is that the workforce team needs access not just to the sales team offline, but also to SFDC or whatever CRM is being used for these kind of stage 4, 5 deals, which is high probability of closure in the next 30, 60, 90 days, right? For us to be able to plan that effectively, right, within the organization. So Prashant, this is an interesting one for you. How do we balance the cost angle with the service level? So Prashant, if you want to spend time and explaining, what's the consideration, how do we want to manage that? Because, everything boils down to the cost, right? Whether it's about the supply side of the house, where you're saying short cycle ramps, let me do some seeding, figure out from redeployment from automation projects. So what's your sense? How do you manage that?
See, I think in one of the presentations earlier in the day, it was said, right, workforce managers put the top line at the bottom as well as the bottom line. So the cost angle is one of the things that has to be looked at, but at the same time, look at the service level also, right? So it's basically the customer service
Yep.
versus the cost, right? And that's where the customer service, or rather the service level target comes into picture. You can do a 90-10, like earlier someone had said. At the same time, you can also do a 80-60. So it is the duty of the workforce team to kind of see the ROI of the KPI that is there. Sometimes that KPI is an expectation, but sometimes that KPI is something that's come through an internal standard. So, if that can be looked at from a cost perspective as well as from the revenue angle, that's where, that balance can be maintained. So always my advice would be always, don't take the targets as is, question the intent behind the target. That's how you'd maintain the cost, revenue, and customer service
Absolutely.
balance.
No, thanks for that, Prash. So coming back to you, Arvind, are there any industry-specific nuances that we need to deal with, right? So on the IT side, Prakash shared his perspective. On the BPO side, do you get similar views, or is there a disparate view?
No, I think that's largely same, because if you look at, there are times where when we deal with the operations, they definitely want to keep certain cushion. But then again, how you manage, what kind of camaraderie you have with operations, that plays a role.
Yeah.
And then what data you kind of share and how you kind of manage. Because again, there are three aspects. Going back to the previous question, how do you kind of automate and make your system more efficient? How do you plan? And when you plan, basically, a lot of time we have on services side, depend on the business, you have OEs, right? So you have to plan for seasonalities. So do you really want to plan just close to seasonalities, or you want to plan a little ahead of time? Again, depends on the quality
Yeah.
that you want to manage.
Yeah.
Then how do you want to cross scale and utilize your folks? So these are three things which also plays a critical role along with some of these things.
No, thanks for that. I think you really summed it well. In terms of the future, right, and you mentioned some of the tools that you started dabbling with, what do you see are the trends that are impacting, right? So obviously everybody is talking about Chat GPT and MLAI, but almost all the tools talk about neural networks and the ability to ingest data from external sources, whether it's weather or some special cause variation, and be able to give you those alerts for you to go back and fine tune your models. But what are the trends that you're seeing, and what's your sense? How do we cope up with it, right?
Okay. See, I would say, last 5 years, in two different companies, I've been evaluating a lot of workforce tools. And if I look at core workforce tools, when they come and present about forecasting, and you really go deeper and talk to them, there are times they speak about we have hundreds of algorithms. But when you really get into technical side of it and have those discussions, largely they'll come up with 4 to 5 models. And it's all best pick models when you run those simulations. And these are basically predominantly some of the tools. I spoke about Calabrio.
Yeah.
And it's on forecasting side, they have, when I have seen almost 3, I'm sure these guys must have evolved. So I'm yet to see that. The kind of technology these guys have used, it was different compared to any other tool which is prevalent in the market. And why I'm saying with so much confidence, because I was myself working with the data science team on the same technology.
Got it.
And we built it.
And you were able to benchmark.
We were able to
basis the
benchmark.
past data and backtest the results.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic.
If I can just add here, right? I think one of the challenges the current generation of forecasters and planners have is a problem of plenty.
Yeah.
There's plenty of data, plenty of models. Uh, the challenge they face is the decision making on that. Which model to take, what data to take, is the data clean? So, I think, not just knowing how to forecast, but knowing how to decide what is the right forecast model to take and the right data set to take is a key skill, in workforce forecasting and planning at this point.
Absolutely. And yes, some of the tools have started offering the what if analysis as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Sorry, Prakash, you want to add? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Second, what Prashant said, the key differentiator would be the logic that you use in your search and match kind of a thing. Because the overall tool framework, I think there are plenty of tools comparable. Hardly you can make any differentiation. And what makes the difference is the logic, because that is customized to your requirement. And as a workforce management, you understand better the variety of requirement, whether it is a T&M requirement, is it a project requirement which has a 3 months, 6 months kind of a thing, or you have a annuity kind of a business kind of a requirement. And for short term, whether you need to look at the gig force or what Rashmi and Kiran presented, or you need to look for outside. So the logic that you build in the search and match, I think that makes a key differentiation, which is purely customized to your own organization.
No, absolutely. And thanks for that. I know there is paucity of time. So one last question, and this is my favorite one. What is the most successful and on the flip side, a failure while you have led these initiatives? Need not be with this organization, because there are people who will try and start relating to it. But in your careers, right, which is at least a couple of decades for all of you, if you want to just spend 2 minutes to explain what was the success, what was that use case, what was the success that you derived out of it, right? Obviously, if you want to share your perspectives.
Maybe I will start this time. Yeah. So one thing which I can pick up is the internal rotation part. So for various levels, and typically this is in the fixed price project, we fix up a particular tenure. Say every 2 years, the employee is eligible to get moved to a next higher role. And typically any project manager, any delivery manager would not want to release his best resource. But that's what the organization wants, because when you get a new deal where you need hundreds of people in a short span of time, at least 50-60% if you are able to fulfill internal, the cultural element is managed, and you can kind of smooth takeoff. So somewhere we had to incentivize rather than a consequence management approach. So currently what we are doing is that the employee getting rotated to a higher role is kind of linked to employee's promotion. Typically promotion also will have a quota, right? So you link it to a preference is given to an employee who has moved out to a higher role, and we see good traction coming.
And how do you incentivize the manager to release? That is the critical aspect.
Yeah, so for manager, we are not giving any
There is no
monetary incentive, but we do a lot of song and dance in terms of a lot of communication goes from the leadership with the delivery manager's photo. So every delivery manager aspires that, okay, my photo comes, and whenever senior leaders go to a particular location, because it's a captive kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So when you do a town hall, you get 2-3 of them and make them speak.
Make them
So
heroes.
At least,
yeah, absolutely.
if not everyone, at least few of them feel that, okay, next time I should get an opportunity to speak. And there are stories communicated about people who are rotated. So in a mailer, you will have 3 or 4 people. They say what benefit they learned. They learned new technology. They learned to new environment. They got promoted. So with employees' photo also, we send. That's what I meant by
absolutely.
Song and dance.
I think I have enough people asking me to kind of wind up. But I think thanks to each one of you. I think those are brilliant use cases and learnings for each one of us to take forward. I know the time was short, but maybe at some other time we'll elaborate more on some of these perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.